Getting people to Jesus. Welcome to Bible Study Hub. I'm Ann Wiggins, and we are continuing our devotional series, 10 minutes or less, in the Gospel of John. And if you follow along with us day by day, this is Monday, April 14th. We are in John chapter 12, and we're going to do a couple verses today, verses 20 to 22. I will be reading from the Legacy Standard Bible, so let's get rolling. This is what it says in John 12, 20 to 22. Now, there were some Greeks among those who were going up to worship at the feast. By the way, Greeks would just be like Gentiles. These then came to Philip, one of the disciples, who was from Bethsaida of Galilee, and began to ask him, saying, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip came and told Andrew. Andrew and Philip came and told Jesus. And that's it for those little verses. Now, it's the week of the Passover in Jerusalem. So as you can imagine, the city of Jerusalem begins to just absolutely swell with visitors from all over the place, pilgrims coming for the big celebration. And in fact, it is their biggest celebration of the year, much like Christmas and Easter would be to us, Passover would be to them. It obviously commemorates the exodus from Egypt, the slaying of the firstborns who didn't have the blood over their doorposts. But so it seems to be just a little bit strange to like parachute into this overarching narrative of the Passover that a group of Gentiles, Greeks, want to talk to Jesus. It just almost doesn't seem to fit, which I love because it makes us kind of dig in and see why is this put here under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit? Well, let's talk about Philip, kind of the main character in this little tiny section of the chapter for a moment. He was from a little city called Bethsaida. Now, Bethsaida was just a little fishing town up north on the coast of the Sea of Galilee. And it was filled with a mix of Jewish and Hellenistic or Greek influenced cultural people. He shared the hometown with Andrew and Peter. So we think they probably all knew each other as fishermen before Jesus called them. And in fact, Philip was handpicked by Jesus to be his disciple and was one of the very first ones that Jesus called. So we don't know why, out of all the disciples, these Greeks, these Gentiles, went to Philip to ask him if he could get them to Jesus. But for whatever reason, maybe it was because they realized that he had kind of an inside road with those of the Gentile culture based on where he was from. But anyway, they chose him and said, "Hey, we want to talk to Jesus. Can you get us to Jesus?" There's kind of a subtle signal to us as readers in this version of the story. Do you remember how Jesus's advent began? Do you remember the story of the wise men, the magi, the Gentiles from the east who came to kind of initiate Jesus's ministry on earth when he was very little? Well, that was Gentiles from the east. Now we have Gentiles from the west wrapping up the story, kind of like bookends, honestly, of Jesus's time on earth. So his incarnation was flanked on both sides by Gentiles looking intently for him. You know, Jesus was obviously sent to primarily the Jews. He says that himself. But in that, he also came for all people. And sadly, because of the overarching rejection of their Messiah, in the Gospels, we see the focus of the gospel turn from the Jews to the Gentiles for a time. The Jews will come back to the Lord in the end. And we do pray for and look forward to that day. We love the Jewish people dearly. But there's some important things to glean from these tiny little verses in this tiny little section of Philip bringing people to Jesus. You know, earlier in the Gospels, if you remember from some of the other accounts, there were other people who tried to get to Jesus like little children, and the disciples blocked them. They were like, "Nope, you don't need to see Jesus. You're not important enough, or you're not the right kind of people. We're looking for adults. You're not invited." You know, those types of things. And Jesus didn't handle that well at all. He did not he handled it well, but he did not like that. And he, of course, invited the children to come to him and embrace them with such love and kindness. So Philip seems to, after all this time, have kind of learned his lesson about people who are seeking Jesus, not blocking them to get to see him. Gentiles were generally despised by the Jews. We have to keep that in mind so that the story makes a little bit more sense. In fact, they would go out of their way to never go through Gentile territory if they could possibly help it. And if they did have to, they would shake the dust off of their sandals when they exited the land. They were so disgusted by the pagans. They wanted nothing to do with them. They were supposed to be the missionary nation to the world. And instead of becoming that, they just learned to really detest those nations around them. And so you kind of get that feeling as you read the gospel. But Philip here is doing great. He goes to Andrew and he says, let's get these people to Jesus. And I had to ask myself, am I doing what Philip did? Am I the person that if somebody is seeking Jesus, would they come to me and say, can you help me find Jesus? I hope I am. I hope you are, if you know Jesus. Years ago, my husband said something to me that was really life-changing. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I did my normal, apparently, thing of going, oh, I'm sure that person would not want to do this, or I'm not going to ask them because I know they're going to say no to this, or something to that effect. This is my personality. I don't think so. Yeah, it's too scary. I'm not going to do it. They might say no. Oh. And Lee graciously looked at me and he just said, Anne, stop saying other people's no's for them. He went on to say, if you say no for them, it's 100% going to be a no. But if you ask, it might surprise you and turn out to be a yes. I've had to really incorporate that thought into my conversations with people. There are times when I feel like I want to bring this person to Jesus, or I want to bring Jesus to this person, probably a better way to put it. And do I just say to myself, oh, I know this person and I know they would never want to have that conversation. Do I say their no for them? Or do I ask? As you go about your time, your day, your week, especially in this week prior to Easter, if you're watching live with us, because this is the week that leads up to Easter this coming Sunday, let's look for opportunities to be like Philip, to have our eyes open to those people around us and to say, hey, I want to bring you to Jesus. Do you want to go find Jesus with me? I can help you get to him. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for being with me here on Bible Study Hub. We will return, Lord willing, tomorrow morning. 7 a.m. goes live. 6 a.m. Eastern, goes live with our videos on Facebook and YouTube. Until then, I will see you, and I hope you have a wonderful day.